Now, I hope you all don't have travel plans, because if you do, don't watch this film yet. Watch it after you travel, and I'll get to the reasons why. Tonight's film is a great movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's Phone Call from a Stranger, and it came out in 1953. It stars Gary Merrill, Shelley Winters. It has a very small role from the great Bette Davis, Keenan, Wynn, and Michael Rennie also co-starred. So it has a fantastic cast. It has that solid 1950s cast, really. And I want to note that this came out 3 years after All About Eve, and I'm just noting that because Gary Merrill and Bette Davis, of course, were in that film together, and they ended up getting married to each other. So they were married to each other during the making of this movie. And also, another 1950s icon, writer, director Nunnally Johnson, he helped write this film. And he also had directed The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit, which was my very first episode on the YouTube channel. And I can definitely see similarities between this movie and The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit simply because the writing and the script is just fantastic. It's great. It makes you think. It's deep. The themes are very powerful, just like The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit. So Nunnally Johnson, I have a lot of respect for him, and I'm just now starting to recognize him, and I'm really glad that I have. So the theme of this particular film is definitely forgiveness. Should you forgive someone if they go behind your back and do something really wrong, such as an affair? The plot of the film is, so at the very start of the film, you quickly realize that Gary Merrill's character is leaving his family behind. He's leaving his wife and his kids. And you can pretty much tell it's because his wife had an affair with another man, and he can't stay around her anymore. He can't look her in the eye without thinking about the fact that she was with another man. And put yourself in his shoes, because this is something that most people can relate to, which is why I love Nunnally Johnson's writing, because it makes you think. So right away, I started enjoying the film. He's traveling to Los Angeles. He wants to get away from his wife, and he meets these people during his travels in the airport before he gets on the plane to LA. And there's a huge storm going on. He meets Shelley Winters, Michael Rennie, and Keenan Wynn, all fantastic actors. And they come to call each other the Four Musketeers because they all get along. They all have different personalities. And Gary Merrill's character is really in the center of it, learning about everybody. And the movie is just about the relationship that he builds with them. He learns about how everybody in this world has their own private problems. You don't know, the person next to you might be having a horrible day but they might be smiling, because I don't know, just everybody has their own problems, and he's quickly realizing that he's not the only guy with problems. So one thing I do want to note also is that I learned a lot about the airport life and just the process of getting on a plane back in the 1950s. And I just recently got back from traveling on Halloween, and I'm so glad I didn't see this movie before, because this movie got my heart beating fast. And I want to warn, for people that haven't seen this movie yet, I would pretty much recommend that you don't watch the rest of the review until after you've seen the film, because I am going to be giving quite a bit of spoiler alerts from now on. Okay. So they get on the plane. There's a huge storm going on, And Shelley Winter's character is extremely frightened. I can relate with her because I hate flying. I'm scared to death of being up in the air. And you quickly realize, okay, back in the day, you can smoke on the plane. Of course, we can't smoke on planes anymore, thank God. And they're on this propeller plane, those crummy propeller planes. I would never, it's insane. So it's storming, they get on the plane, and my heart was beating fast the entire time. And all right, they made it to their next destination. When they get to their next destination, this is when Gary Merrill's character learns about Michael Rennie, his character's problems. And Michael Rennie, he was in The Day the Earth Stood Still. That's what I recognized him from. So he learns that Michael Rennie has a huge problem that he can't seem to get over, involving drunk driving. He killed a bunch of people drunk driving, and this car scene of him drunk driving, this got my heart beating super fast too. I was so nervous during this scene, and the car crash scene was just so intense. So I was, at this point, I'm like, okay, this movie is an action, intense, it's awesome. So that scene was great, just a note. Then they get on the plane, they got to get to their final destination. And again, the plane is having problems, bad weather, and there is just an extremely frightening plane crash scene, which, this is why I told a lot of spoiler alerts for the people that haven't seen the film. So the two crashes that are in this film will haunt my mind for a long time. Definitely, I'll always remember they were great. And the acting, the chemistry between the four musketeers was awesome. So the rest of the film, the last 30 minutes, is just Gary Merrill's character getting in touch with the people, the other three musketeers, that he wants to deliver their final message and their final thoughts to them. And Bette Davis has a real short scene towards the end, which I won't go into detail, but the last 30 minutes of the film weren't quite as good as the first hour, but Bette Davis's scene is pretty good. I'm going to give this movie 3 stars, and I want to get to what Bette Davis had to say about the film. She accepted playing the role, her small role. She believed that her character was awesome. She thought, not all roles have to be the main leading role to be great, which shows that she was, that's great logic. So she had this to say about working with her husband at the time, Gary Merrill. The film would star Gary, but my part was very nice, and it meant it would be working together. Another Man's Poison had been a disappointing experience in terms of the finished film, but personally it was wonderful because it offered us the chance to be together. That's another film they worked on together. I, of all people, could understand that Gary cared about his career, and that sometimes our careers would keep us apart, take us in different directions, but I preferred not to think about it for the moment, rather just to be able to luxuriate in our togetherness. Those were the moments I would most like to relive, and those were the moments when the Ruth Elizabeth side of me was exceedingly hopeful. Ruth Elizabeth is her true name. I just described Gary as a lion, but he was really more of a tomcat. Male cats like to go away for weeks at a time, and when they return tired, hungry, and bedraggled, with no explanation whatsoever for their absence. I admit that at the time I thought it might be other women, but I think now it may have been other bottles. So right away, their relationship, in a way, can relate to Phone Call from a Stranger. because of affairs. He'd come back all bedraggled from a binge, having disappeared for a couple of weeks and scaring the life out of me. I would think each time, if only he comes back, I'll be so glad to see him. I won't say a cross word. I made my plan. I'd just overlook it like with a big male cat, if you've ever had one of those. I'd show him his food and water and his bed and leave him alone to sleep it off. Then I'd be all brightness and cheer and not rebuke him, and he'd love me. Then Gary arrived. The rat! How dare he do that to me? So they definitely had problems. She was about at least 10 years older than him, but that didn't have anything to do with their problems. They would have eventually divorced, but anyways, that's just some interesting background between the two during the film. I gave it 3 stars. It's definitely worth watching. The crash scenes will haunt you forever. It definitely made the film worth watching, and also just the fantastic writing and the script. Really, this is one of those movies that makes you think. So enjoy the movie. See you next time, guys.